Hello again everyone from Tokyo, Japan, and welcome back to Japan Vintage Camera, where I'm coming to you on a really nice day here at the park. Very nice day today, kind of sunny, a little bit warm, a much better day than yesterday when it was kind of cold and rainy all day. I'd wanted to come out and make a video and do some work on my video about our trip to Kanazawa, but it was just too miserable yesterday and I had too many other things to do. But as today is a nice day and I really want to get some more camera videos done, I decided to come out and shoot another video. For those of you who are familiar with cameras, you're probably looking at this and saying, hey, that's not a Japanese camera, that's a German camera, a Leica camera. And that's exactly right. Today's video is going to be about a really wonderful camera, the Leica M3. For those of you who are new to my channel, I sell vintage Japanese cameras and sometimes German cameras in my online store, japanvintagecamera.com. I have an Etsy store which is also called Japan Vintage Camera. So if you'd like to buy this Leica or another vintage, I guess German, Japanese, or whatever camera, please visit one of my stores. I'll post links to my stores in the description below the video. So yesterday I was quite busy because I came across a pretty good lot of really interesting cameras, and this was one of them. I was really surprised when I got this camera because when I looked at it and I saw the appearance, it was really beautiful, clean camera, no dents, hardly any marks on it, no cracks or damage to the leatherette. And I saw the strap lugs on here, these kind of ones which are riveted on the side and they look like ears. I thought, wow, that's a really nice old double stroke Leica M3. And so I went and I picked it up and I charged the shutter and I discovered it's not a double stroke but a single stroke, which is really weird because according to the serial number this is a 1956 version, and either this is some kind of very early model of a single stroke camera. More than likely this was originally a double stroke camera which someone sent to Leica to have converted into a single stroke system. It's an earlier model camera with the earlier strap lugs, but some of the later features, for example the later shutter speed dial and film rewind dial. So kind of an oddity as far as the Leica M3 goes, and that kind of makes this thing a little bit more special than your typical 1956 Leica M3. Some of you are probably looking at this funny thing on the front of the camera, and these are kind of what look like eyeglasses which clip on the top. These were used on 3 different lenses on the Leica M3. On this particular camera, this is a 50mm Summicron lens, but this is what is known as a dual range Summicron lens. And dual range means that it has a, when you attach the goggles to it, you have a close focusing system which allows you to focus more closely than you could with a standard Summicron lens and with most other 50mm or rangefinder cameras. If you remove the goggles and you pull up on the lens and switch it the other way, that switches it to a conventional, I guess, focusing range. So the dual range Summicron is highly regarded. Even though it was designed for close focus photography, a lot of people consider this the best performing of the earlier, I guess, M-mount Summicron lenses. The 2 other lenses which come with the goggles are the 35mm Summaron and 35mm Summicron lens. And these needed the goggles because the M3 did not have frame lines for the 35mm lenses, only for the 50mm and narrower lenses. So in order to be able to properly frame I guess, image for the 35mm lens, it needed the accessory goggles on the front, or of course you could use an accessory finder which slides onto the top. And Leica and other manufacturers made those as well. I really love these M3 cameras. I've had a few of these over the years. It's been quite a long time since I had the last one. My last one was a single stroke, but quite a bit newer version than this, and I really love that camera. But once again, someone offered me a good price for it, which I couldn't, I guess, say no to. So I ended up letting it go and kicking myself today for doing so. Then I came across this one. I got this yesterday, and though I'm tempted to keep it, I think it's something that maybe someone else might put to better use than myself. A little bit of history about the Leica Summicron. Came out in around 1954 or so and was produced into the 1965, 1960. It was one of Leica's most popular M series cameras. They start with the M2, well, not star, but different variations. We have the M1, which is a camera similar in appearance to this, but without a rangefinder system. And M1s are often used for medical or microscope purposes, to attach to one of these things where you don't have to have, a rangefinder focusing system. Then there was the M2, which looks very similar to this, but which has an external frame counter dial. Then we have the M3, which has a built-in a film counter with the disc here. Then we have the M4, which featured improved film loading system with a fixed take-up spool and with a winding knob on the side. Then they moved to a rather hideous looking camera. Some people think it's hideous, some people think it's pretty cool, the Leica M5. And then after that was the M6 and M7, and after the M7, the MP and other different versions. But of all these different cameras, the M3 is regarded as the classic Leica. It's the most popular one, and if you're shopping for a Leica M camera, this is probably the most common one you're going to find. This particular version was made in 1956, as I said, which was kind of a big year for these cameras. They produced a lot of them, more than 4,000 of them in that year. Nowadays, 400,000 is more like what the annual production of a popular camera, or even more than that. But back in the days, that was pretty good numbers for Leica. But once again, as this is a single stroke camera from this year, this one is quite a bit more special than what you would normally run across. Let's go ahead and take a look at the features, functions, controls, and how to operate and use the Leica M3. And we go ahead and start at the top here. And here we have the film rewind knob. And this you kind of have to pop up and turn with your fingers to rewind the film. There are some accessories which were made for these, which add kind of a lever to it, which makes it faster and easier to rewind the film. On the other side here we have the shoe for the flash gun, and this is a cold shoe. We have a couple of sockets on the back here. We have one for a bulb flash and one for a strobe flash. This one has a PC adapter in it, this one doesn't. You can put a PC sync adapter on either side. Most people won't shoot a bulb flash. If you're shooting a strobe flash, this particular camera, it's good to go. We have the shutter speed dial located on this side, and we have a range of B in 1 second all the way up to 1/1000th of a second. Here we have the shutter charging lever with the shutter button located right in the middle, and this accepts a standard cable release. And I earlier mentioned the film counter dial here under the window. On the back here we have the viewfinder eyepiece, which is quite large for cameras made around this time. In these days they were still kind of rather squinty on a lot of rangefinder cameras. The wonderful thing about the Leica M3, it has a very beautiful viewfinder with a really good view. The frame lines are what people think is kind of perfect for one of these cameras. Just the later cameras tend to come with more frame lines kind of packed inside, which kind of clutters up the viewfinder and can make it sometimes confusing which frame lines you're actually using. The M3 is more simple, and for a lot of people they just say it's the best of the different variations. On the back here we have a film door which pops open when you load the film, and then we have a kind of indicator dial which you use to set to remind you what type of film you have loaded in the camera. This is simply a reminder. It doesn't have any influence on the operation of the camera. The camera will still operate properly regardless of what this number is set to. On the front of the camera we have a release lever here on the top. You push this inward and that releases the winding mechanism and allows you to rewind the film. We have a self-timer located here on the front right. It's very convenient for taking, the earlier version of selfie photos. You just set the camera on a tripod, pull the lever and depress the shutter button and run, and when this gets back up near the top it will take a photo. Here we have the release button, which allows you to remove and replace the lens. On this side here we have a frame line selector lever, and by moving this you can kind of change the frame lines inside the camera. We have a standard 50mm frame lines, and then I guess frame lines for like 90mm and like 135mm. Those were the big I guess short telephoto options for rangefinder cameras. On the bottom of the camera we have a tripod socket here. This is a standard 1/4" tripod socket, and then we have the switch here which you use to remove the bottom of the camera and to load the film. And unlike the earlier Leica L mount cameras, you don't have to cut the film leader in order to load the film. That's a great improvement over the L mount style cameras, or like the Leotax or Yashica cameras I did reviews on earlier. But there is one similarity to these old cameras, and that is you still have to use a film take-up spool. So to load the camera you would take this cover out here. The top of this camera, I kind of mentioned this in some of my other films, is flat. So that allows you to set the camera on a flat surface when you're loading the film. When you take the bottom cover off, you can pop open this door with your fingers here. You would thread in one end of your film leader into the take-up spool with the silver end pointing upward. And with you have to be kind of careful to put it on the right way. It's kind of easy to wind this the wrong way, and then you go to put the film in the camera and it won't line up right. Just follow what it says here on the guide here. It's a very simple kind of image which shows you how to do it. And then you simply, with the film started on here and your film canister, you push both in at the same time. And here, when you look inside, this camera, unlike the earlier ones, allows you to see the film moving across as you are winding the camera. Keep in mind, though, that still it's sometimes difficult to line up the holes in the film with the gears on the take-up spool here. So what I often do when I load one of these cameras, just to make sure that it's working properly, is I'll kind of lift up on the take-up, on the rewind knob, and after loading the film I'll go ahead and wind the film until I get up to number 1, and usually by that time this will start to move. And if this is moving, it means that the shutter lever or the winder is actually winding the film. More than one time I've loaded one of these cameras and I've gone out and started shooting, and then I've discovered that it wasn't actually winding the film, and it's quite annoying, especially when you thought you got some really good photographs, then you find out you didn't get any at all. Kind of a troublesome thing. I'll go ahead and take these off here. Moving the lens is quite simple. You just push the button there and turn it leftwards, and you can kind of see the inside of the camera here. We have the roller here which attaches to the rangefinder mechanism. We have the adjustments here for the infinity focus. You can adjust it inside here and the screw inside the roller. There are different attachments or different access points to make adjustments to these cameras. Really wonderful. Some things that you kind of have to look for when you're shopping for one of these cameras is the first thing to look for is the condition of the shutter curtains. The Leica M3 has a pretty reliable shutter mechanism. The M4, which was released in 1967 and produced for a number of years, those tend to suffer a lot from the shutter curtain failures. I've had 2 or 3 of them where the shutter curtains tear and then the shutter doesn't work anymore. That's not something which I've ever personally experienced with the Leica M3, but it does happen. I've heard of other people having this experience. Another thing which sometimes happens with these is the splitting mirror, or in the focusing patch, gets fungus or separation, and you can kind of see like whiskers or stuff going through it. And thankfully the one in this camera is perfect. It's absolutely clean. If this is deteriorated, it means you have to have the prism re-silvered. There are some people who can do that, and there are places that I guess if you're mechanically inclined, you can do it yourself if you buy the appropriate, I guess, ingredients and stuff to do it. A lot of these cameras have problems with the Volcanite. That's what this is called, Volcanite, kind of a cover which is stuck on these cameras really, really well, and it can be kind of difficult to remove, but sometimes it gets really dry and brittle and breaks off in places. You can find kits with replacement Volcanite to put on. It requires removing some of these things, the controls on the front to put it on, but makes the camera look much nicer. There are quite a few people out there who overhaul these cameras. There are some good techs in America who do this kind of work, and here in Japan we have a lot of people who work on Leicas. These are definitely worthwhile if you want to buy one. These things have appreciated so much in value over the years. It's amazing. It wasn't that long ago that I could get a clean Leica M3 body with a Summron or say Elmar lens for around $1,000 or so, and now you're looking at least double that price and sometimes triple, and depending on the serial number it can be several times as much depending on the rarity of the body. So in these kind of inflationary times, these are kind of actually a good investment, and perhaps I may get a few more just for that reason alone. If you like photography and you want to have what is pretty much the best rangefinder camera available, this is one which probably 90% of people will think is that camera. And if you've gone out, you take one of these out and shoot with it, I'm sure you'll love it. As I said earlier in the video about the dual range Summicron lens, it is considered the best performing of the I guess 50mm Summicrons. Better than, of course, the collapsible one or the rigid one, which it resembles a little bit. But these do have some problems. One thing with these old Summicrons is the coating on the front of the lens is a little soft and susceptible to scratches. And the inside of the rear element, which faces toward the front, is prone to hazing. And I've come across maybe 6 or 7 of these lenses over the years, and I have yet to see one which does not have at least some amount of haze on it. And pretty much all of them have marks to varying degrees on the front element. This one thankfully doesn't have any scratches or anything like that. There are a couple of, I don't know, I call speckles, minor marks to the front coating, but which don't really make any difference in this particular one. Of course, this one has a little bit of slight haze on the rear element, as all of them do. But the one I had which had the worst haze, I had maybe 8 or 9 years ago. It was actually my favorite lens, and the photographs I got out of that, you would never know that the lens had any kind of haze on it because they were really brilliant. This one is in much better condition than that one, and yeah, really wonderful to take photographs with. But anyway, I plan to be listing this camera tomorrow in my online stores. If you're interested, please check the links below, and that'll take you to my stores where you can have a look at it. I will also be listing a few other more interesting cameras, and I'll be making more videos about them over the coming days. So if you'd like to see those, please subscribe, or just check back in a couple of days and see what's available. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you tune in again soon.